Hi there, welcome back to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. Today we're diving into something really interesting, and actually quite personal for a lot of language learners. It's that moment when you realize your voice, not just the words, but your actual voice, changes when you speak in another language.
Yeah, it's subtle at first. Maybe your tone softens. Maybe you speak a bit higher or lower. Or maybe you use gestures differently. But something shifts. And it can make you feel like you're almost a slightly different person.
Exactly. It's not just pronunciation or accent, it's the whole way you express yourself. And sometimes you don't even notice it's happening until someone points it out. Or until you hear yourself recorded and think, wait, is that really me?
And the thing is, it's not just about how you sound. It's also about how you feel when you speak in that language. You might feel more reserved, or more playful, or more polite. It's like your voice is picking up the cultural mood of the language itself.
It's kind of wild, isn't it? How deeply voice and identity are connected, and how that connection bends a bit when we step into a foreign language. Not in a bad way. Just different. Adapted. Flexible.
And for many people, especially those who are still finding their voice in English, it can bring up questions like, is this really me? Or why do I sound more confident in English than in my own language? Or even the opposite. Why do I feel so awkward in English?
There's so much to unpack there, so let's talk about what's really going on when our voice shifts in another language, and what it might be telling us about how we see ourselves.
One thing I've noticed is how much people adjust their pitch or volume without meaning to. You're suddenly more cautious, or maybe more formal. You might speak more quietly in English than in your native language, especially at the beginning.
That's so true. A lot of it comes down to confidence. When you're unsure, your voice naturally pulls back. You might speak softer, avoid rising intonation, or flatten your tone, just to stay safe. It's almost like your voice is saying, don't draw too much attention to me.
But sometimes, the opposite happens. Some people actually speak louder in English. Or they over-enunciate every sound, because they are trying to be as clear as possible. And that can make them sound more assertive than they really feel inside.
Right, so your voice becomes this balancing act between how you want to be understood and how comfortable you are with the language. And that can be really confusing. You might think, why do I sound more serious in English, or why do I not sound like myself?
It's almost like putting on a jacket that doesn't quite fit yet. You know it's yours. You know you're growing into it. But for now, it sits a bit awkwardly. And that can be frustrating, especially when you feel fluent on the inside, but it doesn't come out naturally yet.
And then there's culture too, right? Some languages are more melodic, some are more flat. Some value indirectness, some are very direct. So when you speak in a new language, your voice starts adjusting to those expectations too, even if you're not aware of it.
Absolutely. I've heard people say, in English, I sound more polite, or in my own language, I sound more passionate. And it's not that you've changed who you are. It's just that your voice is navigating new emotional rules.
And that's fascinating because it shows just how fluid our identity can be. We're not fixed. We're not limited to sounding one way forever. Language gives us range, even emotionally.
And that emotional range, it's actually something really beautiful. Because when your voice shifts in another language, it's not necessarily a loss of your original self, it's an expansion. A discovery. A way of accessing parts of you that maybe didn't have a voice before.
Yeah. It's like, in your native language, you might be the kind of person who holds back. But in English, you find yourself being bolder. Or softer. Or funnier. And you think, where did that come from? But maybe it was there all along, just waiting for a new channel.
I love that. And it's why I think paying attention to how your voice changes is actually a kind of self-awareness. Because your voice isn't just about sound, it's about how you show up in the world.
It's true. I've had students who told me, in English, I sound younger, or I sound more formal. And what they are really describing is not just their tone, they're describing how different they feel inside that version of their voice.
Sometimes that's empowering. Other times, it can feel unsettling. Like you're watching yourself from the outside and thinking, is that really me? But the thing is, both voices are you. Neither one is fake. They're just shaped by different contexts.
And you start to realize that language doesn't just change the way you speak, it changes what you feel comfortable saying. The emotions you allow yourself to express. The way you move through conversations. Even the way you breathe when you speak.
That's so true. In fact, some people find it easier to say emotional things in English, even things they'd struggle to say in their native tongue. Because there's a little distance. A little room to be more vulnerable, without all the pressure of cultural expectations.
Which brings us back to this idea that when you speak in another language, it's not just your grammar or vocabulary that shifts, it's your voice, your emotional rhythm, your inner permission to speak differently.
And that permission bit is really interesting. Because often, in our first language, we're taught who we're supposed to be. Maybe you grew up being told not to speak too loudly, or not to interrupt, or to always be polite. So your voice learned those rules.
Exactly. And then you learn English, or any other language, and suddenly, the rules are different. Or you're in a new environment where people speak with more directness, more laughter, more openness, and your voice begins to respond to that.
So in a way, your voice isn't just translating your thoughts, it's adapting to the emotional landscape around it. And that can feel like growth. Or it can feel strange. Or both at once.
It's also why some people say they feel more authentic in a second language, which sounds odd at first. But maybe what they mean is that their second language gave them space to speak without all the weight of old expectations.
Yes, like they're not boxed in. They don't have to perform who they've always been. They can try something new, say something differently, even use phrases they'd never dare to in their native language, and no one blinks.
And the voice that comes out of that space? It's still you. Just a version of you that's discovering what it's like to sound like yourself, without a script.
That's such a good way to put it. No script. No old habits. Just voice. Just presence. And maybe that's one of the greatest gifts of learning a new language, not just fluency, but freedom. To use your voice in a way that feels true, even if it's not familiar yet.
And the more you speak, the more that unfamiliar version begins to feel natural. You start trusting it. Letting it lead. Letting it blend with the person you've always been, and the one you're still becoming.
And that blending, it doesn't have to be perfect or polished. In fact, it's better when it's not. Because that's when it feels real. When your accent slips in. When you pause to search for a word. When you laugh at how a sentence came out a bit funny. That's you, being human in a new voice.
And it's powerful, isn't it? To realize that your voice isn't fixed. It's flexible. It's alive. It grows with you. It bends, stretches, softens, sharpens, depending on where you are, who you're speaking to, how you feel that day.
And once you start noticing that, it changes how you approach your English practice too. You stop trying to force your voice to sound like someone else's. You start getting curious about how you sound, when you're relaxed, when you're focused, when you're enjoying the conversation.
That's where fluency really begins, I think. Not just in the words you know, but in the relationship you build with your own sound. When you start thinking, this is what I sound like when I'm brave. Or, this is what I sound like when I trust myself.
And that trust, it comes slowly. One conversation at a time. One message. One voice note. One awkward sentence that you still manage to say anyway. And little by little, your voice finds its footing.
And before you know it, your English voice becomes more than just your other voice. It becomes part of your voice. Not separate. Just another way of showing up as yourself, in a bigger, broader world.
So if you've ever listened to yourself in English and thought, this doesn't sound like me, maybe it's worth asking, what if this is me? Just a different shade. A different texture. A different version of the same truth.
And maybe that version has something new to teach you, not just about language, but about how you move through the world. About how you listen. How you express. How you carry yourself in spaces where nobody knows your backstory.
That's the thing, isn't it? When you speak in another language, especially in English if it's not your first, you're stepping into a space where people don't have the same history with your voice. So you get to show them who you are, in real time.
No assumptions. No past labels. Just your words, your tone, your rhythm, all unfolding moment by moment. And that can feel terrifying. But it can also feel like freedom.
It's like a blank page every time you speak. You're writing a version of yourself that maybe even you haven't fully met yet. And that can be such a gift, to meet yourself again through sound, through language.
And what's beautiful is, the more you speak, the less you chase this idea of the right voice. Instead, you start learning how to recognize your voice, even when it sounds different in English. You start saying, this is still me. I recognize myself in this.
That shift, from chasing someone else's sound to honoring your own, that's when the learning becomes deeper. Because it's no longer just about how others hear you, it's about how you hear yourself. And whether you're proud of the way you show up.
And I think, even when your voice wobbles, even when you hesitate or mispronounce something, there's still something very strong in that moment. Because you're using your voice, fully aware that it's still in progress, and choosing to speak anyway.
That's it. That's the power. Not the perfection, but the presence. The choice to speak. To connect. To keep going, voice and all.
And funny thing is, sometimes your English voice gives you the courage to say things you wouldn't dare say in your native language. Not because you're hiding, but because the words feel like they belong to a braver version of you.
I've felt that too. Like, in English, I give myself more permission. To be direct. To be vulnerable. Even to be a bit playful, in a way that feels different from my first language.
Yeah, like you can rewrite your tone. Reset how you communicate. Not fake it, but explore it. And over time, you start bringing some of that freedom back into your native voice too.
It's a two-way street, isn't it? Your first language shapes how you speak English. But learning English also starts to shape how you speak your first language, how you pause, how you explain things, how you listen.
And in the middle of all that is your voice, flexible, evolving, not trapped by one single definition. It's like watching yourself grow up in real time, every time you open your mouth in a new language.
Which is why I think it's so important to be kind to your voice when you're learning. Not to rush it, not to judge it. Just to listen. To support it. To let it grow on its own timeline.
Because honestly, your voice is doing something really brave. It's walking into uncertainty and still choosing to speak. That alone is a sign of strength, not weakness.
And even on the days when it feels shaky, or awkward, or not quite you, it's still worthy of respect. Because it's carrying more than just words. It's carrying your effort. Your hope. Your willingness to try again.
So the next time you hear your voice in English and it sounds different, softer, stronger, uncertain, curious, let it be. Let it exist without needing to compare. That voice is becoming something. And that process, that's beautiful.
Thanks for spending this time with us on the British Accent Podcast. We hope today's conversation helped you see your voice in a new light, not as something to fix, but as something to understand, honor, and grow with.
Keep speaking. Keep discovering. And remember, your voice doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful.
We'll talk to you again soon.